They met in a place that promised nothing more than the fleeting present. At a train station. She was running late for her train. He had lost his ticket. In the chaos of the platform, where people were nothing but blurry shadows, they collided so hard that her coffee spilled all over his white shirt. "Damn it," she gasped, grabbing the edge of her suitcase. I'm so sorry." He didn't look at the stain. He looked at her eyes, the color of strong tea, where panic mingled with amusement. "That was my favorite shirt," he said. His lips twitched into a smile. "But I suppose right now it's the only thing that can make me smile, since I'm not finding my ticket anyway." She gave him hers. "Take it. Mine leaves in 20 minutes. I'll have time to get a replacement." It was madness. But madness is exactly where stories we remember for a lifetime begin. A month later, she knew he couldn't stand oranges because he'd eaten too many as a child in the hospital, and he knew that when she fell asleep, she traced circles on his palm, as if checking that he was still there. They were one of those coincidence couples. They loved the same obscure band, quoted the same lines of poetry, and could be silent together in a way that made the silence ring louder than words. They were walking along the embankment when the wind tore the last leaves from the trees. He stopped suddenly and said, "Look." She looked. He pointed to a crack in the asphalt, where a thin, almost thread-like sprout was pushing through. "That's us," he said. "Against all odds." She laughed, but something inside her tightened. Because he often spoke of them as a miracle, as something fragile, something that could be taken away at any moment. There was a sense of doom in his love, as if he was rushing to accumulate as many memories with her as possible, knowing the limit was finite. And here is where the ambiguity begins. She had a friend, practical, unsentimental. One evening, scrolling through his social media, the friend asked, "And who's this?" "His sister," she replied, though something inside her clenched. She didn't know why it clenched. The photo showed a girl with eyes exactly like his. The same smile, the same way of tilting her head. "Pretty," the friend said slowly. "Why doesn't he ever talk about her?" She didn't know. He was generally sparing with words about the past. "I'm here with you. That's what matters," he would say when she tried to ask about his parents, where he grew up. He had a graceful way of deflecting questions that didn't offend, but rather intrigued. She sensed a mystery in him, but thought mystery was the fuel of any real feeling. Everything changed on her birthday. He gave her a key, an old brass key with a rounded head, threaded on a leather cord. "This is the key to my past life," he said, "to a house that no longer exists. But I kept it, and now I want you to have it. Because if you hold it, then the part of me that existed before you is still alive." She cried. From tenderness, from the strangeness of the gesture. And then she noticed that while she was turning the key in her hands, his gaze had fallen on her wrist. He was staring at an old, faint scar, the mark of a burn she'd gotten in childhood, in the kitchen. He went pale. "Where did you get that?" he asked, in a voice that held no trace of celebration. "Nothing," she said. "I knocked over a pot of boiling water when I was 3. He nodded, but she could see something in him had broken. The evening was ruined by an invisible crack. He became too gentle, too quiet. And 3 days later, he disappeared. He simply stopped answering messages. His phone went silent. The door to his rented apartment was locked. She waited outside his building, went out of her mind, replayed every word she'd ever said. She thought she'd offended him, done something wrong, that he, as he'd feared, had turned out to be fickle. The pain was physical. She hated him for his silence, then begged him to call, and finally, emptiness settled inside her. 2 weeks later, she finally got into his apartment. The landlady handed her a box he'd left behind with a note. "Give this to her." Inside the box were her things that had been at his place. A comb, a book, a forgotten t-shirt, and an envelope. Inside the envelope was a piece of paper. On it, an address. Outside the city, an hour's drive away, and one sentence in his sweeping handwriting. This is where it all began. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you. If you want to know, go. If not, throw this away and live your life. She waited 2 days. On the third, she got in the car. The house was an old, burned-out frame, a ruin overgrown with nettles and young birch trees. She stood in the middle of the ashes, holding the brass key in her hand, not understanding why he had sent her here. Until she saw her. On a bench by the fence sat a girl, the same one from the photo. His sister. But as she got closer, she realized it wasn't his sister. Two alike. The same eyes, the same shape of lips, but the gaze was glassy, absent. Do you know her? Asked a woman sitting beside the girl. A caregiver, perhaps. I'm not sure, she said quietly. She looks like someone I'm looking for. This is Liza, the woman sighed. And you must be that girl. He said you would come. He said he had to leave, that he couldn't leave her alone again. I don't understand. She felt the ground shift beneath her. Is he her brother? The woman looked at her with that peculiar pity reserved for those who don't know the obvious. No, they're not brother and sister. They're one. They were born in this house. On the same day. Conjoined. They were separated by surgeons when they were a year old. But the woman nodded toward Liza, who was staring blankly at the drifting clouds. After the operation, years later, she started having seizures. They say it's psychosomatic. She feels what he feels. And when he's happy, she cries in pain. When he's suffering, she laughs. Their connection, it never broke. It just became distorted. She stared at Liza. At her wrist. In the exact same spot where she herself had the burn scar, Liza had one too. Old, whitened. That's from the fire, the woman said, following her gaze. When the house burned down, he pulled her out. They were teenagers. He burned his arm, but he didn't let go. She is his weakness and his strength. He tried to build his own life, a separate one. But the more attached he became to someone, the worse she got. He didn't tell you, did he? He couldn't. He thought that if he loved you, it would kill her. What mattered was that she finally understood why he always traced circles on her palm when he fell asleep. He was checking if she was real, not a dream, and whether she had any chance of staying with him when another person's reality constantly demanded him back.